You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Starius and Crystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Great.
Actually, it happened because of Israel, my husband. He read one of your articles in Lenny's podcast newsletter. And then he's like, oh my God, you got to check out this guy. And I'm like, all right, who's this guy? So then I listened to a podcast episode that you were on with the marketing millennials.
Wait, are you recording this?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Yeah,
We
you
are
should
rolling.
be.
This is live.
Good.
Now it's real.
Yeah, now it's real. And I was just listening to you talk about community. And for the first time, and I told you this, I felt seen. And then when I learned about your book, I was like, okay, I need to buy that book. So I bought the book.
There it
and
is.
I'm reading the book. I read a bit slow because I like to absorb things.
Yeah,
but
me too.
it's so great. And I love how it's full of both like the human aspect, the emotional aspect, more technical, lots of business. It's just like very holistic view of what it means to belong and build a community.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that.
So what's a good place to start? I liked it. Can we just jump in? Because I mean, we're talking about the inner teacher, and there's a page here that I want to read. It's right in the introduction. And it says, when you got your first job as a community manager, and then you said, no problem, I'll just find mentors and training programs to teach me how to build community on a professional level. Well, it turned out there really weren't many people with experience building communities for companies back then. It was truly a brand new profession. I realized I was largely on my own. So I want to know, like, what did it feel like to be in that place where you realize, holy shit, it's just me and the path I'm about to forge?
Yeah. And I'm bringing myself back to that time. So one thing is, it wasn't just me forging it. There were others who were starting to play in that field. We didn't necessarily know of each other yet. To some extent we did, but I definitely felt alone at that time. And all the mentors I had were more in like marketing, PR, like related fields, but no one really did community in the way that I was talking about it at the time. How did it feel? I was pretty like young, right out of college, ambitious. I had already been writing about this kind of stuff for a while on my blog. I helped my college create the first social media marketing class. Like, I kind of really liked being at the forefront of things. I think it gave me a lot of energy at the time. And maybe it was being young and naive and just not having a lot of fear around that. Like, oh yeah, no career path here, I'll just make one. I think I've always had a very strong entrepreneurial part of me. And I think I felt excited that I found something that I really enjoyed, that I was really passionate about, that I believed in, I believed would grow, and that no one else had really done before. It was certainly hard, and I had lots of moments of feeling lost and wishing there was like a playbook I could follow. But I think at that time I felt just a lot of hunger and energy and excitement toward it. Yeah.
What was the seed? What was the seed that was placed somewhere in your consciousness that this path that wasn't a thing was enough of an idea to like start a career on? Like, was it that you had that passion, that excitement? Can you identify? Did you recognize that there was a vacuum? There was a need for something that didn't exist?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't plan on it, right? It's just the nature of the experiences I had leading up to that point, which, you know, go back to being a young kid, two immigrant parents who really wanted to ingrain in community. I happened to be very extroverted. I really love people. I love connecting with people, but struggled with it as a kid in where I grew up, at least in person. And so it kind of pushed me onto the internet at a really young age, way before it was really normal to interact with people on the internet to that extent. Certainly not at the age I was. And
What age were you?
early middle school at that time. And I played a lot of video games, and it was when console games started going online for the first time. So even playing those games online was really new. And so I started meeting people through that, and then I got into like IRC chats and online forums and message boards. I started a community with two other people that we started a clan in the game and started like an online forum for it. And so, I mean, I was 13, younger, and I was interacting with, grown people. I don't know if they knew how young I was. And so I got exposed to interacting with people on the internet online at a really young age, way earlier than most people my age, and became good at it, got skilled at building community and connecting with people at a really young age. And so whenever new social media platforms came out, I was just like very naturally an early adopter of it. So by the time I was in college, I was in college for the rise of Facebook. Like we were that, had opened to colleges first. That was me. I was in college then. So we had access to Facebook. We had, AIM, MySpace, that whole generation. And I was on everything. And then I got to school. I was a business major in the end. And I would go to marketing classes that would just talk about like the traditional marketing mix and print ads. And I'm like, how are we not talking about the internet and social kind of platforms? This seems like obvious to me, but it hadn't caught up to education and even business at that point. And so, yeah, it just like the gap was very apparent to me because my lifestyle was already very online and in social media in the version that it was at that time, but it wasn't showing up at all in the way I was being taught business. So I started writing about it, reading about it, researching it, talking to people. Like I said, I helped build the first social media marketing class at my school. I like pitched it to the business department. They wouldn't take it, so I convinced the computer science department to take it. I launched my college's first blog. They didn't have a blog before that. So I was just like, wherever I saw gaps, I just started doing it. And that turned into the career.
How did you make that switch from educating to monetizing? Like, was that a conscious decision? You thought, okay, I'm connecting all these people and there's this building community, but I don't know how to pay the rent, or, whatever the thought process was. Did you come to that?
Well, I mean, I was a business major. I wanted to build businesses. I always saw myself as wanting to be an entrepreneur. And my first job out of college was, someone read my blog, and there are two founders of a new startup, and they're like, hey, we're launching this new startup. We read your blog about community. We really, vibed with it. Would you want to come be our intern for the summer while we're in an accelerator program? And I was like, will you pay me? And they're like, no. And I was like, will you cover my rent? And they're like, yeah. So I flew to Philly 2 weeks after I graduated, and I was an intern at a company called Scribnia for 3 months. That ended up turning into SeatGeek, which is a whole separate story. Now a massive company. I did not join the rest of that rise, but I was there at the very early days. And so it just very quickly turned into a career. I think that I don't know that there was a big leap there for me. It was kind of like the passion for social media and the comfort with it, and wanting to be an entrepreneur kind of were ever present for me at that stage in my life. Yeah.
So you kind of eased into it as, either a consultant or as an employee of a social media company, and you just applied your skills set to their business model. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, my whole career has been one unfolding accident after another. I've never interviewed for a job because it keeps happening. I mean, I joined that internship. Halfway through, we pivoted to SeatGeek. The original product was called Scribnia, which was a platform, like a community platform for bloggers. Someone bought the product, but needed someone to run it. And they were like, well, David does everything that's not engineering. So I went over with acquisition and became the managing director. I was basically the CEO. So 3 months out of college now, I'm basically running a funded startup. So I got thrown into the fire there. And then I did that for a couple of years, and I got poached by another company called Zarly, which was like the darling of Silicon Valley at the time, raised a ton of money, another marketplace kind of social platform that I was connected to. I knew people who worked there. They're like, we need a head of community. So I jumped and I joined there. And then just one thing kind of rolled into another. I ended up getting fired from that job, which is a fun story.
We've
But
got
then, yeah, it
time.
was consulting, starting companies, navigating the acquisition, which then brought me back in-house for another company. So it's just kind of been this weaving of consulting, in-house, starting companies, things like that. Yeah. Now coaching.
I want to ask you about the inner journey about how you got to community, because there was another part in your book that I really resonated with. I had been to 3 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, 3 different middle schools, and then finally went to 1 high school. They finally threw me a bone in high school.
Yeah.
And I find, and now like I travel and I'm moving, like I'm living in another country. So I find this very personal mission to want to create community online, because it's the one place where we are never disconnected. Even if I move, even if I'm in another country, we can stay connected online. And so when I, read your story about your childhood and how you were looking for that community online, I wonder like how much of that is still, or at least when you were building CMX and, working as a community builder and things like that, how much of that was at the forefront of everything you were doing?
Being online specifically?
Building your tribe, or, like trying to bring people together so that you could have community.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, and one that I've been reflecting on a lot recently and have some new understanding of. My story is pretty similar to what I've heard from hundreds, almost every other community builder, anyone who's doing this for work, which is like struggling with feeling lonely or isolated or abandoned or some sort of disconnection at a young age that has made me hypersensitive to when other people feel left out. Like I have a very strong radar for when someone feels left out and I want to bring them in. And a skill set in bringing people together, because I had to learn how to do that the hard way. And also kind of a hole in me that I've been trying to fill for most of my life of connection and belonging, because that hole that was created at a young age is deep, is traumatic. And so it formed patterns where I'm always the community builder. I'm always, you can't exclude me if I'm the one building the community, right? Turns out that's extremely untrue. Yeah. And yeah, we could talk about that one. That's a rich one.
Is that the cancel culture thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
been through it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I've been through that. And it's shown, that experience has shined a light for me on how there's a beautiful aspect of feeling lonely as a child and then becoming a community builder as an adult. And there's a way that can be harmful and rooted in, if you look at like attachment theory, right? It's like an insecure attachment where now I need the communities I build to see me and accept me and hold me in a certain way in order for me to feel like I'm enough and that hole is being filled, rather than I'm coming from like, I'm already enough, I'm already whole, and I want to build this community and create connection. Right. So when we're building community from this place of lack and suffering, it can actually create this insecure attachment between you and the community. And that leads to all sorts of messiness. Yeah. Right. And so that I see the ways that played out in my life and my role as a community leader over the last decade and a half. Yeah.
So is that what led to the burnout, or is there another aspect? I mean, like coming to that realization?
Yeah, I mean, the burnout came from a complex web of those kinds of patterns and stories. I think for me, it was this like mix of fear of abandonment, which is very closely tied to me to like the need to be successful and seen as successful and have a strong reputation in order to feel like I'm enough and worthy of love. And so from a very young age, those two patterns were really ingrained in me. Like I needed to be accepted and included, and I really struggled. And I needed to be successful and have a strong reputation. And so that I mean, that's my career in a nutshell, right? Like being really entrepreneurial, really hungry, really ambitious through the lens of building community, social connection, belonging. And it's not all coming from a place of like not enoughness and suffering. Like there's a lot. I mean, there's also always a genuine drive to help people, to connect with people. There's like a lot of love in how I've shown up. And there was a lot of fear. And ultimately, yeah. I mean, doing that for 15 years, CMX built over, it was about 7 years, and then the acquisition, or it was 5 years, and then the acquisition, and then I was 3 years at the company that acquired us. And I just arrived at a place where I was running on those scripts so long and lost sight of what was really important to me and what felt aligned for me. And I felt creatively uninspired. I wasn't burned out and like overworked necessarily. At that point, I feel like I had a better balance and structure in how I worked. I had good systems around that, but there was like a emptiness to my soul at that point, like a deep misalignment. And I think that's where the burnout came from for me.
What was there a single event, or was it just cumulative over time, where the aha moment, this like higher perspective maybe on the situation that gave you a new view of how to proceed? Was there, could you identify what it was?
Hey, quick note. Peter's Inner Teacher Academy is launching soon. If this is resonating with you, head over to innerteacheracademy.com and grab a spot on the wait list. These trainings are intimate and space is limited. So if you want to be first in line, tap the link in the description below and sign up.
You can also see details about my 2025 retreats at some incredible locations around the world, like Iceland, Austria, California, and New Zealand. Attendance at these trainings will count towards in-person hours for the Inner Teacher Academy. And now let's get back to the magic.
Good question. Not really. I think there was a cumulative sense of something's not right, of there must be more to life than this. And I was just sitting with those big questions for a long time. I've always been a very like introspective person as well. I was sitting with those questions for a long time. Ultimately, I had a decision point, which helped. It was kind of like a deadline where my vesting was coming. I was going to be fully vested from the acquisition. And so that was going to be a point where I decided to stay or go. And there was strong parts of me that was saying stay. There were very good reasons to stay, practical reasons of we had a child, we had a second child on the way. We decided to move across the country. There's like a lot of risk to leaving a pretty comfortable financial situation. I felt a deep commitment to the community, and I felt like I'm kind of abandoning it, right? There were stories like that. A need to see through what I started. Like a lot of stories that were like, don't do it. Don't do it. Stay where you are. And there was just this like something deep in me that felt misaligned. And I had no idea what it was. I could not name it at the time. It was just this emptiness, this dullness. And like, I love the people I worked with. Like on paper, it all looked great. And yet I just felt this dullness. And so I decided to take the leap. When the vesting was complete, I said, I think it's time for me to step away and just step into the unknown and see what happens on the other side. And it was only through that process over the next few years of a lot of things dying and ending, and a lot of really, really difficult experiences, and letting a lot of things undo and fade away, and then sitting in the abyss of the unknown in between, before slowly, very, very slowly, like pieces started to come back together, and I started to feel into what the next aligned path might look like. And I'm still doing that now.
Yeah, I mean, this podcast platform that we've started, this story is a common one, like taking the step into the unknown. Mm-hmm. And our logo for this podcast is a labyrinth. It's that first step is the only decision that you really have to make to get into a labyrinth. It's not like a maze where you have decisions to make. It's like the only decision, get in the hole. I mean, get in the process. And then there's twists and turns, and it's kind of spinning you around, but eventually you end up literally in the center. And in this case, this common thread of these stories and people that we've been meeting, they all have a similar flavor, that there is 2, 3, 5, 10 years. For me, it was 10 years of kind of what am I doing with all this stuff that I've accumulated? And what coalesced it for me was a publisher. Sounds maybe similar to your story, but a publisher reaches out and says, hey, can you write a book about this? And, it was 75,000 word contract. I'd never written longer than a 1,500 word article for a magazine. How do I do that? And they said, we don't know, but here's an advance, and we'll talk to you in a year. It was 3 years in the making. 3 years it took me to write the book. I got a couple extensions, and the last extension was, if you don't finish it now, you're going to miss the editorial cycle, and it might be 5 years before you get back in the flow. So that was motivation for me, and that was like really a hard time in my life, because I'd already kind of segregated a young family with a child, etc. And for the last 2.5 years, I was present physically, but not present psychologically or even, energetically, because I was always churning. The mind was churning, like how to congregate ideas into a concise book. I ended up writing 125,000 words, so I turned this manuscript into the publisher, and they said, finally, thank you, but we have to edit out 50,000 words. How long was your book? Do you know how many pages?
I don't remember. I think it was like 60,000 words.
Yeah.
It's a little shorter.
So 50,000 words, that's a job in itself to edit out. But in the end, they hired an outside editor, and who was absolutely fantastic. And my book won a literary award unknown to me. And when I kind of realized why it was given an award, it was entirely because of the editing. I mean, the content was there, but the editing is what made the book easy to read. And that's been just a godsend for me. Yeah.
What was the process of writing your book, David? Like, how long did it take you? And what was that moment? Did someone approach you, like with Peter, or did you say, I need to write a book about this? Like, how was it?
Yeah, it came to be, I wanted to write a book. I put together a proposal. It was like years that I wanted to write a book, and it just kind of was one of those projects I never did because, as Peter knows, how difficult it was.
Hardest thing I ever did.
Yeah, same. And then one year I remember for my I was doing my annual review, and I was like, this year I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to do it. So I put together a book proposal and started pitching agents and pitching publishers. Everyone said no. An agent wouldn't even take me. And I got lucky. COVID happened, and I had written an article for the first round review. I didn't even write it, actually. I was interviewed for it. And it's a great publication that's well read. And an editor from Wiley read that article. It was about running webinars, or like how to bring your community online because of COVID. Editor from Wiley read it, reached out. He was like, hey, would you like to turn this into a book? And I was like, funny you should ask. I have a full book proposal. And he was like, great. And ended up helping me shape it, pitching it internally, and then got started on the process. So it was luck of timing. And the process, so yeah, mine took 9 months. We had a very hard deadline, which was the due date of our baby. So our first kid was going to be born. And so I was like, I'm not writing this book after he's born. It's just not going to happen. So we're like, we made it 2 weeks before the due date was that's when the manuscript has to be done. And I just cranked. It was the hardest thing I ever did, because I'm pretty good at writing articles, but I'm very fluid in my writing process. I write a whole thing and I'm like, no, I want to move this all around. And I love just messing with it, which is fine when it's, 500, 700 word essay. When it's 60,000 words. I was like, oh, I want to switch up these chapters. And like 15 hours later, I'm done reorganizing everything. So it was grueling, and it was just like a lot of time. But I just went to a coffee shop for like 5 hours every morning on Saturday and Sunday, because I was also working full time. I was doing this on the side. So I just like woke up early every weekend for a while, went to a coffee shop, and just went heads down in the zone until the manuscript was done.
Wow. Yeah, my experience was someone had told me, don't count your words. Like, just keep writing and just get everything down in the best order. And I just did it chronologically. I just decided I'm going to write this story chronologically. And the story was more about me recovering from breaking my back. Like, how do I approach something like as extreme as that mentally and physically? But so I'm writing, and it surprised me that I had written 50,000 words over the contract. And, that was in some way I felt good about. Like, okay, I'm writing. But the editor, just like what you did, I never did. She just kind of moved things around, went back in time. It wasn't chronological at all. And it's kind of like a mystery novel, in a way. Like, how did this tie into this? And, oh, let's go back. And,
finding the thread through everything is the hardest part.
And to me, that I didn't have that ability to write like that. And it sounds like, you did it on your own. You figured out how to do that on your own.
I had editors, I had developmental editors, copywriters. Right. So, I had a lot of help. That was definitely the biggest.
So Wiley helped you through that process.
They had a full team. Yeah,
good for you.
There's no way I would have been able to do it without them.
No. Yeah, I was pretty take a dive off the deep end for me. Sounds True just said, here's your money. Good luck. Yeah. And, if you need any help, contact us. And I never really reached out to him in anything significant, because I had a content that I felt like I could get on paper. It just, I wasn't skilled at it that much. And in the end, it was a team effort for sure with the editor. And I'm grateful for this day, because the one, when did your book came out, during the pandemic or post-pandemic?
Yeah, I think it was 22. I want to say.
Oh yeah. So what I found is this ability for the book to kind of travel on its own in terms of getting out into the world.
Totally.
Because my book launched right before the pandemic, and all the book tours.
Yeah, no book tours.
In-person book tours was zero. And so that was, anticlimactic in a way. I'd finished this book, and then I can't go out on the road and kind of share it.
Same.
And it was just a slow build. But since the pandemic's been over, it's different now. It's people are saying, hey, would you come? And it's fun. And the other thing, you're a young man still. I'm not that young anymore. And I joke about this because as I get older, some of the memory cells in the hard drive here are starting to get a little rusty. And so the book is like my external hard drive, so that if I've got an idea that I can't really articulate in the moment, I have a place where I can go. And it's really special that way. I don't know how many times you've reread your book. Have you gone through that process yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fun to go back and see all the opinions that have changed.
Yeah. And the surprise for me was some of it, 2019 is when I finished mine. Here we are, 2025. A lot of my book has lived the test of time, like 6 years. And some of the stuff is still, for me, that was clear. That had a moment of insight. Do you have that process for yourself? Like, where do your ideas come from when you're writing?
Experience, just life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a hard time writing about anything I haven't experienced myself.
Right.
Either experience or a conversation with a client. A lot of conversations with clients or people I work with inspire a lot of the content I create.
So where did Downshift come in? Like after, I imagine it's after the burnout.
Yeah. So Downshift I've been working on for a year and a half with Steve Schlafman and Tracy Lawrence and Andy Johns. And that came about again, kind of accidentally. I was lost in the abyss, not knowing what I was going to do next and feeling a little anxious about that. And Steve Schlafman is a coach. He's been working as a coach for about 9 years, working with ambitious professionals navigating transition. Basically, people who have gone through what I went through, like working your butt off, having a whole lot of your identity and self-worth tied to your success and achievement, certain levels of workaholism, probably experiencing some burnout or disconnection from soul, and not knowing what to do with that. How do I navigate that? Like, there must be more to life than this, but what do I do? And so he had been working in that space for a little while, and he and I have known each other for many years, but mostly through the internet, through social media. He lives upstate New York. We had planned to do a catch up and do a hike together. And it was like a week before we were scheduled to do the hike. He was washing the dishes and had this like download, kind of like, oh, we have accelerators. Why don't we have decelerators? And the idea for Downshift sparked. So he texted me. He's like, dude, I have this like idea I'm really excited about that I think I want to work on. I want to jam with you when we do our hike. And so we spent that whole hike just, I mean, catching up personally, talking about our journeys, and then jamming on Downshift and like the community design. I kind of took like a coaching stance of just asking him lots of questions to help him flesh out what his vision was and what the community could look like. And after hours, we got back to the car, and he was like, dude, you're really good at coaching. And I'm like, thanks. I could do this all day. This is fun. And he knew, I'm looking for what I could do next. And he was like, you just said you could do this all day, right? And I was like, I wonder if coaching is a path that I could explore. And so I did, and just started exploring coaching, and started taking coaching clients, started getting trained as a coach, and just found I really, really enjoyed that work. And also just naturally kept jamming with Steve on Downshift. And we just kept talking about it and planning together. And then we decided to do, so it's at that point, it was a 10-week program. We decided to do a retreat to start it off. And he was like, hey, do you want to help with the retreat and lead the retreat? And I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. So I helped with that. And then he was like, do you want to help actually coach half of the participants through the rest of the program? And I was like, yeah. And it just like incrementally was like, oh, there's opportunities to do more together. And he kept inviting me more into it. I kept saying yes, because it felt deeply aligned for me, until, now we're in the middle of the third cohort. The fourth is coming up in the fall. And, where Tracy Lawrence joined the team, Andy Johns joined the team. Matt Yao was with us for a while, another core member of the team, and we've just been building it out. And we've been describing it as less of a company and more of like an emergence. It's just a project that's emerging, and we're just kind of following the path of what it wants to become and how it wants us to be involved. And it's been a wonderful project, and that's kind of been my entry into coaching people in transitions, coaching founders and community builders who are in the seat. It's been a lot of fun.
That's another pattern we just spoke to Nina from Moon Omens. I don't know if you're into astrology. I am. But she was talking about how she kind of just you're doing the work, right? You're showing up, but you're not having to look for it. You're not having to strive or like reach for something, because what you seek is seeking you. And so you're just kind of like stepping into something that is already yours. It's on the path, and it's just your job to align yourself to it. And then once you do that, like once you follow the inner voice and the inner call, it's like it seeks you and it pulls you in. Like you were just saying, your friend's like, yeah, do you want to help me do this? Yes. How about this? You want to do that? Yes. And it just kind of becomes, I don't want to use the word easy, but
no, aligned. It becomes aligned. Like it's almost, destiny, luck, divine. If you're oriented towards the divine, there's some influence that comes in. It appears through these stories that we're hearing. Like once you step into this labyrinth and it kind of brings you to a place where there's insight, and the insight is attractive. People are drawn to it. And I think that's, I mean, the process that you're helping people with, I went through. I had a corporation that I sold, and overachiever, and running 3 businesses at the same time. And for me, I always in the back of my mind had this yoga teacher background, this commitment to this process that helped me heal from a broken back. And I knew that that was my exit, that I could transition the amount of energy that I had running these other businesses into something that was a little more balanced, healing community in terms of family. And now with this kind of format, it's a expanding back out again. The community is starting to grow again, meeting people like yourself that have really a lot to give. Like I see, I went through the suffering that I bet you a lot of your clients are talking about. And it was a 5-year trial and error process for me to find balance.
Yeah.
And there's I mean, it just seems to me like there's a big market there for you guys, a very big market.
I think so too.
Good for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think like there's a couple thoughts. One is for a lot of ambitious people, there's a pattern, and I know I've had this, where we believe that anything worth doing has to be hard, it has to be painful, and that's just a story, right? And then the idea that doing something that feels fun and easy and joyful, well, that must not be productive. That must not be worthwhile. And so we see how it just gets us into these paths towards burnout, where it's like the only way for you to feel like you're enough and you're successful in this life is to do things that are inherently where there's a great deal of friction, as opposed to the way my experience has unfolded is, I was in the abyss. I kind of like emptied out and like released a lot of the existing things I was committed to, and the things that the stories and patterns I had brought me to that point. I like let go of a lot of those things. And so I kind of had this like blank canvas, just this empty space. And I think the other thing that people mistake about this path is they think like, oh, when they hear someone say, just find the alignment, or the universe takes care of you. It's like that there's this like one moment where it's like, oh, now I know exactly what to do and how to do it. And for me, it was a very gradual, one step at a time kind of process that's still unfolding. And now I know will unfold for all of eternity. But where like I was in this emptiness, and all I would do is when things would come to me, which could be as simple as someone inviting me to coffee, someone asking me to collaborate on something, an article that came up on a feed, I would just pause and feel into, does this feel alive and joyful for me? Like, do I feel my energy being drawn to this, or do I feel kind of like numb, blank? And there might be fear there. Fear's okay, but I would feel a lot of energy towards exploring it, or I wouldn't. And it was as simple as that, saying yes to the things that felt like it gave me energy, the small things, going on a hike with Steve. Like, yeah, I fucking love Steve and I love hiking, so let's go do that, right? I didn't plan on that unfolding into a business opportunity, but it was something that I just followed, that yes. And you just do that over and over and over again, and it's like, pieces of sand that ultimately builds a sandcastle of whatever your next, career or business or project is. It's just like consistently saying yes to the things that give you energy and saying no to the things that don't. You keep doing that enough times, and all of a sudden your life will feel a lot more aligned.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had the similar insight that, this culture, that American mostly culture that we have grown up in, work hard, play hard, love hard. That's my favorite one. Love hard. And where did that come from? And how is that serving us? And when you break your back, there's no work hard recovering from breaking your back. It's the opposite. It's learning how to find softness. And that was a similar experience in terms of feeling into something, like cultivating a more intimate connection to feel. Books show up, read it, or just like you said, I go through that same process. I look for patterns. I look for things that randomly show up. My wife has an incredible talent of just leaving books out in the house, and I'll be walking by, not even aware of it. One of them was The Biology of Belief, the Bruce Lipton's book. Have you read that book? Because it's really interesting. He has this understanding of computers, and he's not a computer person, but he's this neuroscientist, and he makes the connection between microchips and membranes in the body, the intelligence of membranes in the body, connective tissue, etc. When I was at that end of my book process and looking for some valid science for my book, because up to that point it was pretty much anecdotal stories of my working on a yoga mat over 40 years and then working through a process of recovering from a broken back without surgery, I started to see this clarity, this science piece unfolding in front of me. And that to me is such a gift to make space. How do we make space physically in a body? Through softness. It's not about working hard. And I came up with this idea. It's not about force, because in my old days, it was type A, type AAA, get shit done, make it happen. And it's not about force as much as it is about flow. And how do you create flow? You create void. You empty out. You get soft. And the word soft has such a misalignment in culture today, in my experience, that like soft is kind of, it's like you're defeated already, like how can you be soft? And yet my own experience of soft, I even have this on my Instagram page, soft is the new strong. It works on so many levels for creating space, especially in the face of confrontation. And, how to disarm someone in a confrontational situation, in business, in relationship, with children, is just be soft, hold space, and listen. And that to me has been extremely valuable. And to this day, I'm getting work as a consultant in situations, business situations, where I can share some of this. And there's definitely, as you know, there's definitely an audience for that message now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about trust, because as a fellow entrepreneur, I find that everyone has their own way of dealing with trust or having faith in something or some kind of ritual that they do. So when you're feeling like you're stepping into the unknown, how do you silence the mind that's telling you, be practical, that's not logical, how is this productive, what are you going to get out of this, what is the reward for taking this action, versus follow your joy, follow your bliss, follow the thing that gives you energy? Like, do you ever have that internal battle? And when you do, what is your process to come out of that?
I have that battle. Everyone I know has that battle. Right? It's like the contradiction between surrendering and action. Or I just wrote the other day, like pushing or pausing. And I think the reality I've learned is both are true and both are needed. And in this space, there can be a judgment of the action orientation and the hustle, and I think that judgment is equally as harmful as the opposite, right? Of judging softness as being bad. It's like this, both have gifts, right? And so in my own inner world, the way I navigate it is, I'm a big practitioner in parts work. So the idea that I am made up of parts, I contain multitudes, and the parts within me are all good. They're all trying to serve me, but the way they go about that may be different. And so there's a part of me that says you should surrender, you should relax, you should just be calm, you should just let things flow. Just trust. Don't worry about it. And then even there you hear the word should, right? There's still an attachment, like, oh, this is the right way to do things. So already seeing that story and seeing maybe the way that that story may not be totally true. And then there's another part of me that says, no, 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 you need to be practical. You have 2 kids and a third on the way. You're going to have to pay a mortgage. Nobody gets ahead in this world without taking action and doing. You can't just sit around and wait, right? So also a bunch of stories, also a bunch of shoulds, and also has truth in it, right? I do have kids I have to take care of. I do have a mortgage that I'll have to pay. And so I think that the tension when I feel the most anxiety isn't because of either of those stories. It's the belief that one of them has to be true and one of them has to be false. And that's where the tension arises between them, is I'm like, oh, I have to listen to one. And in my experience, that's never the case in a contradiction. There's always more options. There's always a middle way. And so my practice is to listen to those parts. I don't try to silence them. I don't try to silence that inner voice. I actually go toward it. I listen to the voice that's like, no, you got to make money. You got to figure this out. And yeah, you're right. I do have to make money. There are realities here, and I appreciate you looking out for me. And I show it appreciation, and I listen to the other part. I go towards that part, and I listen to what it has to say. And I listen to my parts, but I don't let them grab the wheel. I don't let them make the decision for me. That the decision ultimately comes from, me, as in parts work in IFS, you call it capital S self. In other forms, you might call it presence. It's just like who you are when you're not caught up in your ego and your psyche. That's where I want to be making decisions from. And I can listen to those parts and their wisdom without letting either one make the decision. And generally, when I do that, those parts soften. They feel heard. They're like, all right, you know what my priorities are. Go ahead, make your decision, right? And I can move forward with more of that middle way, balanced approach. How do I really surrender and trust while also keeping an eye on my balance sheet and making sure I'm not, sitting in the abyss too long while I'm putting my family at risk, for example, because that wouldn't feel very aligned either, right?
No, I mean, especially during the pandemic, like who would have guessed that the effects of this period of time would have lasted as long as they did? And I know personally myself, it took me years, literally, to understand what you just described. This listening, inner listening to the different voices. The one that I found to be the most trustworthy of those inner voices is when I created a state of stillness in myself, whether it was walking in nature or just sitting in meditation, not because I needed to meditate, but just because I just felt at that moment stillness was called for.
Yeah.
And that voice has proven to be the most trustworthy. Is it 100%? No. It's like intuition, Intuition, at best, I think the research on intuition, at best, it's 60%, Like when they study the people that are really good at intuition, they got about 60% of the time right. It's statistically significant, but it's still, there's 40% there. How do you justify whatever? And I don't know. I noticed when you were talking about that, you put your hand on your heart. And as a yoga teacher, I see these gestures sometimes as communication. And I just feel like this heart center is so valuable to help qualify these thoughts, qualify, is this something that my heart will feel good about and my head? And if the heart's in agreement, then it's usually a good bet that I'm on the 60% side of that intuition and not the 40% side.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple thoughts there. One is that what was my first thought? I had a good one.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah. I had a good one. Oh, right. So when you think about intuition with making decisions, it sounds like in those tests, they probably used a situation where there was a clear right or wrong.
I don't remember that. I just remember those percentages. And
Right. Well, in order for it to be, scientific,
Study.
it needed to have a clear answer, right? Like, yes, it was
Yeah.
blue or green, right? And you got it wrong or right, whatever. Whereas like what we're describing are much more complex decisions and environments where, if you were to make any argument that there is one path is right, there's 1,000 more arguments for other paths are also right. Right. It makes me think of the Chinese farmer with the horse story. I don't know if you ever heard that one. It's like the
Two sons.
the son breaks his leg, and everyone, all the villagers are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then they go to war, and the military recruits everyone, but they couldn't because he had a broken leg. And they're like, "Oh, you're so lucky that he broke his leg." He keeps saying, "We'll see,
maybe,
we'll see."
maybe,
Right, maybe.
Yeah.
So you never know, right? These are complex decisions, where we go with our career, how we build our business. They're complex decisions. So really, there's no right or wrong. There's just alignment with you. Do you feel like you're in alignment? Then that's going to feel like the quote unquote right next step. And you have no idea what the outcomes are going to be. It's complex. They're complex systems. We can't control them. So, and then what you described with the heart is something I learned as well. And going back to like what you were saying about softness, and I love these conversations now because I work with really ambitious CEOs and hungry executives.
30-year-olds.
I've been there. And to some extent, I still am. Like I still hustle. I still work hard. I still bring ambition. But they see these things as soft, right? Like, oh, it's soft to have stillness. It's soft to pause. It's soft to listen to your heart. Ugh, that sounds so crunchy and feminine, right?
Yeah.
And we could unpack all of that as well. But what I've learned is they're sources of wisdom. And one of my biggest struggles in my career as an entrepreneur was decision making. I would just like not know what to do because I was always trying to make decisions with my head and trying to find the right answer. And that's where you get caught between those parts, going back and forth incessantly, and then make a decision through stress and just pushing through it. And something that I've learned is like there's sources of wisdom in our heart, in our belly. And this isn't just like woo spiritual, like there's actual neuron connections through your body that there's a way of sensing. So if I'm facing a decision and I notice my mind is racing, I may do parts work, but then just slowing down, creating space and stillness and breathing into my heart. And really like just creating space to put my attention there and just notice when I think about choosing option A, like do I raise money or do I bootstrap? All right, let's explore raising money path. I have all the thoughts, all the pros and cons, but tuning into my heart, breathing, slowing down, and just really, really noticing. And what I've learned is when something feels aligned, I feel opening in my heart. When something feels not aligned, there's a sense of closing or a numbness or like a nothingness, right? And then the other source of wisdom we talk about with Downshift is your body or your gut. And so feeling into that area, like below my belly button, that's a whole other, it feels totally different, right? And when something's aligned, I feel really grounded and steady and strong. When it's misaligned, it feels really like amorphous, unsteady. Right. And so I'm like, through this practice, learning where I can tune into my body and then what a yes feels like and what a no feels like. And it's made me so much more effective at making decisions and being a leader. So to the CEO who's listening to this and he's like, what's all this crunchy, soft bullshit? It's like, there's real value that will help you move forward more effectively and quicker. And have greater production, right? If that's what's important to you, by using more of the tools that are available to you.
Fantastic. I share similar understandings with you. The one that when you look at the English language, there's so many little phrases and kind of expressions that have deep meaning from somewhere in our ancestry. And the one that's my favorite is, I feel it in my bones. Mm-hmm. And so when I had my broken back, I was literally feeling it in my bones of the spine. And what we learned on this previous podcast guest is she talks about the spine being this conduit of feeling, literally symbolically and energetically. For me, this expression, where did we get this expression? I feel it in my bones in the English language. You know, at some point, I believe that this was a felt experience, and that people listen to that felt experience. And I've learned how to do that, you know, to feel it in my bones. And it starts with the visualization of the marrow. And can you place your attention deep within the marrow inside the bone? And how did I apply this understanding? It was, if on a yoga mat, you face confrontation all the time, stiff joint, stiff muscle, whatever it is. And at the most refined level of anatomy is this connective tissue web, this inner net of connective tissue in our bodies. What research, this is right in my book, that bone is a form of connective tissue. It's a more dense quality of connective tissue. The ancient yogis believed that we have 108, different books say different number, 108,000 channels in our body of subtle energy movement. Now, who counted? You know, like, what is that 108,000 number, whatever it is? What is that really saying? And underneath, it's saying that we have an incredible sensitivity to the feeling sensations in our body, and the ancient practitioners of this practice of yoga understood, without, they had Sanskrit words for it, but they didn't have the science behind it. They understood at that level of sensitivity that you could feel in your bones. And I feel when I'm confronting, say, a tight hamstring, if I can visualize the marrow inside my thigh bones softening, it's already soft, the gelatinous part of the bone, it creates a connective tissue communicate mechanically and also through the nervous system. There's this mechanical sensitivity of movement in connective tissue that allows me to use gravity to go deeper into a hamstring stretch. And my book title is Gravity and Grace, because during the back injury, I learned that the only really safe amount of movement was gravity-initiated movement. Muscular-initiated movement was too extreme. It would cause an almost instantaneous jolt of pain for me. And so, and then this idea of grace was intuition, and or, you know, you can use this word as a source of intelligence bigger than ourselves or within ourselves. It just depends on how you're oriented. And this was the sensitivity that you're talking about. I was discovering not in my head so much as is on my yoga mat, and recovering, you know, through this process of healing, laying in bed a lot. It is. It's such a. I would like to unpack some of the ideas around softness being feminine, you know, or because, and I'll just mention this because I think it's funny. Trevor Noah is this South African comedian, and he does the funniest take on this expression, "Don't be a pussy." Have you heard this?
I don't think I've heard this one, but
really
I love Trevor Noah.
And I'm not going to do it justice here, but when you think about the anatomical function of a pussy, a vagina, it can birth a child, you know, and it can take incredible extremes of expansion and contraction. Whereas a man's penis, it's just a little knock on the edge of the kitchen table and he's screaming, you know.
Dear
so
Lord.
it was just so funny because, and my
Good
wife's
point.
a doula. And so she shares these stories of birth. And I just, to me, the soft thing being feminine, yeah, that's right. It is. It's a quality of femininity that I'm okay with. I'd like more of it in my life. Yeah.
We need to do a part 2 because I want to unpack this too.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Would you be down to come back for part 2?
Yeah, for sure. I'll send you my Finding My Femininity article.
Oh, yes, please.
Do you have one?
I do.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, well, this has been awesome. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much
you.
for
I really enjoyed it.
accepting our invitation.
And I had the disadvantage of not reading your book before this interview. Now I don't want to read your book.
Well, it's funny because the book was also written way before I went on this journey of learning about my inner world and doing a lot of the healing work I've done. So sometimes I read it.
What is Downshift? Is Downshift your current work or a book
Yeah,
title?
I'm a partner in Downshift. It's not quite full time. So I have my private coaching practice, which is for founders, CEOs, community builders, and then Downshift is for like ambitious professionals navigating that kind of transition.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I really applaud how you've applied yourself, David.
Thank you.
It's really refreshing to hear.
I appreciate that. Still finding my way.
Yeah, no,
Aren't we
as
all?
we all are.
Yeah, it's real.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.